Tina Greenbaum, thank you so much for coming back to Speakers Who Get Results. Clearly, we had way too much to talk about a couple of weeks ago when we first did this conversation. So I'd like to welcome all of you listeners to Speakers Who Get Results, the podcast and the Strategic Speaking for Results Facebook page, which is where we are live streaming this conversation with my wonderful friend, Tina Greenbaum. So welcome back, Tina.
Elizabeth, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And last couple of weeks ago, we talked about how to be a confident negotiator and wound up, and actually a couple of weeks before that, I interviewed Tina on how to be a catalyst leader. And we had just started the conversation about how to be a confident negotiator. And I said, whoa, stop. That's a whole separate conversation. So this is an adjunct. Those of you who are listening, go back and look at elizabethbachman.com/podcast for my earlier message with Tina about how to be a catalyst leader. And in order to get to the point where you can be a catalyst leader, you need to negotiate. Negotiation is such a huge part of business, of all kinds of business. So Tina, we only got part way through what you were talking about. You have a course about how to be a confident negotiator. And certainly I think about all the ways I have sabotaged myself in negotiations over the years. I really want to learn more. So would you please share your slides here and just review what we talked about last time? Quick review.
Okay, so a quick review. So we looked at what are the skills of a confident negotiator. And what I want to emphasize here, there are many, many skills, but this course emphasizes the emotional skills of what goes on inside between you and you, that the person that you're sitting in front of may or may not have any idea of what's happening. So we want to help you to be really confident inside. So what are the skills of a good negotiator? Problem analysis, kind of figuring out what actually is the problem, preparation, active listening, emotional control. Again, this is a lot of what I do. Verbal communication, collaboration and teamwork. If you're working with a team, to be able to negotiate amongst you. This goes with problem analysis. Once we analyze the problem, how are we going to solve it? And decision-making ability, which sometimes has to happen very, very quickly when you are negotiating, and you have to be able to tweak and twist and move with the speed of what's happening. And your interpersonal skills. People talk a lot of times that they want to have this poker face, which is good, that somebody doesn't maybe know exactly what you're thinking, but you want to be warm. You want to be friendly. You actually can smile in a negotiation. And ethics and reliability, I always say, that speaks for itself. So what we talked about last time is we got a lot through preparation. We're going to talk a little bit today about active listening and emotional control. I don't know how much we're going to get through. I go into this in deeper, detail in the course. And I also add in the course assertiveness training, which we're not going to be talking about today, but also really, 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 really important.
Well, and let me just quickly say, for the decision-making ability, there are people who make decisions just snap, they just know instantly. And then there are other people who, especially for major decisions, they have to think about it. It's really two major types, personality types. And knowing which one you are, and knowing the sort of person, if you can, the sort of person you're negotiating with, what they're about, is very important. And that's where I really loved what you said about preparation last time, because what I find is I'm best if I think about something, or if I can go away and think about it, if it's new. But when I'm prepared, when I've thought about what are all the possible scenarios that I can come up with, then I can make fast decisions because I've prepared myself.
Correct.
But walking in cold, for me, it's not a good thing, walking in cold.
And the truth is, not only do you know yourself, but your body gives you information, Elizabeth, that lets you know immediately, I'm not ready to make this decision.
Mhm.
So knowing, your style, but also knowing what kind of signals you get from your body will give you that very, very quick feedback as to maybe this is not such a good idea right now for me to give a final decision.
Well, and this is also important for the people you're working with. As I'm working with a team right now, and about half of them are very fast decision makers. They just decide instantly. And then if they have to change something, they'll go back and change it later. And the other half are the ones who really want to think about it so that when they make a decision, they can stick with what they chose. If you're a fast decision maker and the person you're trying to convince sometimes they really do need to go away and think about it, which the fast negotiators don't always appreciate.
Right. So it gets back to a lot of times on sales when they say, we give rewards to people who take action. And if you take action now, then this is what. So this line here is exactly what we're talking about. People buy on emotion and justify with logic.
Right. Yes.
You have to be very, very aware of where your emotion comes into a major decision. And I said last time, my ex-husband taught me a lot of good things he was a very good negotiator, but he would never make a major buying decision without going away and sleeping on it and coming back the next day. Even though he might have really wanted it, he wanted to make sure that all the numbers worked and everything kind of worked before, he would sign on something. So this is such an important subject. Just this one little piece right here.
Right.
You're negotiating how you know yourself, how much room you give yourself. And I always kind of like to think about how my brain works. My brain gives me certain information sometimes very, very, very quickly. It comes in pictures and thought fields, and I trust that. And I also trust that feeling of like, don't step your foot into this one.
Yeah.
Just be cautious. And again, these are things that are going on between you and you that somebody might not know. But if you haven't prepared and gotten to know yourself at that deep level, you may make some really kind of not so great decisions.
Which actually is one of the things that I've learned from working with you as when I've taken your Mastery Under Pressure course, was how to recognize the signals that my body is sending me, basically to trust my gut, since I tend to be someone who trusts my head more than my gut. And you really taught me how to notice and trust my gut when a decision comes along.
So on that, you may trust your gut that you're feeling a certain way, and logic may tell you, well, I might have to do this anyway.
Yeah.
So we want the communication between the two. Sometimes we're going to act on our feelings. Sometimes we're going to act on our logic. Sometimes we're going to really have to know which is which and why we're choosing something. So a lot of meat to this. So quickly, again, your job is to identify their problems and the outcome that they desire. And so once you have an idea of who you're dealing with, what you're dealing with, the purpose is to build the gap between where they are and where you know that you can take them, and how you are that person that can help to get them there. Again, there's a lot of creativity in this as well. And so very quickly know where you're going to start the negotiation. You can start high. And we talked about, there's a fellow that did a course on negotiation. He would talk about the flinch when they go, oh my God, that's so expensive. So when you know that somebody goes, oh my God, that's so expensive, you know that that's about as high as they're willing to go. And then you have your range in between. We did an exercise last time about thinking about negotiating for a salary, or if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a job, the salary, or you're charging for your services, if you're a consultant like Elizabeth and I are, that you know that the party is struggling financially. What does that do to the way that you approach the negotiation? And we can do this one. Is this Elizabeth? We hadn't done this one. Was thinking about negotiating for a salary or charging for your services if you know that the other party is thriving financially. So just
Right.
think about that for a moment. And how would you enter that negotiation? And what kind of questions would you ask yourself?
Then perhaps money is not the key factor. So what can you, what, or may not be the key objection.
Correct. It
Yeah.
may be time and money are the big ones.
Yeah.
I don't have time for this. I don't have money for it. I need to talk to somebody. I need to check with my boss. I need to check with my husband or my wife, or there's a lot of kinds of things that people will come up with. And if you have in your mind things that you're willing to trade, they're kind of called in-kind services. So let's just say that you're you're doing a speech and you would like them to sell your book. And they say, well, I can't afford your fee of what you're offering, what you want, but we are willing to sell your book. We'll take a profit and then we'll give you the rest. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can negotiate for something that's going to benefit you.
Right.
It could be,
or for that matter, just saying, well, I really want to do this. Will you commit to sending 3 referrals? That you have to, but you've got to be able to follow that up. You've got to send them something to, you've got to bug them to do it, because most people will say, yeah, of course, and then never do it. So you do have to follow up on that one.
so you always want to think about, okay, so if I have to negotiate on my price, what else can they offer or I can offer? And a good negotiation is everybody walks away feeling like they've gotten something.
Yeah.
Also frequently given up something, but they feel good about that's a good negotiation. I didn't get this, but I got that. So, and then lastly, think about how you would negotiate for either a salary or a fee if you had no idea how much that person charged. I mean, what their financial situation was, just kind of blind. And unfortunately, we don't have the feedback from the audience, which I frequently do this exercise in a group. And different people are sometimes all over the place. Well, I felt sorry for them, or, I really thought I could charge them all this money, or, all different kinds of things. But there was a woman that I actually met and went to a training of hers, and I really liked what she did and thought, I'd love to have an individual session with her. And so I asked her how much her fee was. And she said $500 for an hour, didn't blink an eye. Again, she didn't know me. She didn't know, anything about me really. She said, but if that doesn't work for you, then I have other trainers that I can, set you up with, or you could read my book, or you could come to another workshop. So she had a whole bunch of things that she was already prepared if I were not that person that would jump onto that fee. And she didn't blink an eye. And that was a really great lesson for me, just kind of watching her. And you charge what you charge, or, as I say, sometimes I feel called to give away my services or to kind of lower my fee. It's my choice. It's my business. I can do that, but I don't do it out of desperation. Desperation is the worst feeling, being on the other side. I need you. I need your money. And it feels sticky and gooey. And then you kind of walk away and you feel crappy about yourself.
So speaking of that, just quickly, do you have any exercises or tips for us if we find ourselves in that needy, desperate spot?
Yes. So I'd like to tell the story from when I started out as a therapist, and I was very needy and very desperate and very hungry for money. And I was going to set my boundaries very carefully about my hours and especially cancellations. And I got a cancellation at the last minute from someone, and I was on the phone with her, and I said, well, I charge for these cancellations. And she said, but I'm sick. And I hadn't really kind of had my policy kind of figured out at that time. So, but I just kind of went too much for that. Well, I'm sorry, but I charge for this. And I lost her. I lost her as a client. It got so sticky and gooey. So this was 38 years ago, and I can still picture her right in front of me. And I made a decision that I would never talk about the money, kind of that kind of situation, unless it was either person to person. Again, I used to see people in person, and because frequently there was something behind it. There was some therapeutic issue. Was people canceled at the last minute because they didn't want to come, or they thought something else was more important. I started out working with women with eating disorders, and they were binging on the money that they were going to spend on my session. And so I just made a decision that I'd rather have a conversation around the money and write a text or send somebody a bill. My husband had a visit with a chiropractor, and he had a shingles shot, and he got really sick, and he canceled the appointment. And she didn't say a word. She didn't call him, send him a bill he never went back.
Right. So if we find ourselves in this needy situation, how can we get out of it?
Well, number one, you have to recognize what's happening inside. Everything that you're going to hear today from now until doomsday is always about what's happening between you and you. Recognize that feeling that I'm it's a feeling, I call it stickiness. It's like I'm begging. It's like in relationships when somebody calls too many times, or somebody's, overbearing. Recognize what's happening within you and stop.
Another, what it makes me think of, and one of the things that I do is I try to focus on the other person and go into active listening, which I know is one of the things you're about to talk about. So I make a point of getting out of my own head and all the things that my voices are telling me, which may or may not be true, and focus on the other person and how I can solve their problem.
Beautiful.
And that helps a whole lot, because it just gets me away from all the voices that are yelling at me.
Because we as service providers, whatever it is that you're providing, the customer is the person whose attention we need to pay attention to. So this goes back again to preparation. I'm going to go through it real quickly. Did I research who I was meeting with? Did I have a starting figure in mind? We talked a little about that. Did I have a figure in mind to walk away? This is a really important one. And that'll keep you out of that desperate thing. I know that this is my bottom line. And I always think about, well, this is not the only deal it's not the only job. It's not the only person. It's just not the right one for me. Trading for negotiating for services. So I'm going to run through, I'm just going to
Yes, right.
so I can get to that slide, and we're going to go back to active listening. And you mentioned that, Elizabeth. I like to call myself a professional listener because I have worked on this skill for many years, and I have some tenets that I work with. Okay, the most basic tenet of human nature is that we all want to be heard. We love to talk. Some of us like to talk more than others. Some of us kind of don't like to talk at all. But the most important thing is that I can listen and hear what you're saying with my whole body. And so when I say that listening with your whole body, it means I'm very present. I might get distracted over here. There might be sounds, there might be a phone call, there may be something comes up on my whatever. But if I miss what you're saying, I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you to say it again. So my whole body, my whole mind is connected to you. Again, I have an open body position, because if I'm sitting there like this, what is
arms folded? Yeah.
arms folded. This says, I'm already closed off to what it is that you're saying.
Mhm.
And somebody's gonna pick that up. I lean in, right? When they talk about lean in, when somebody leans in, that means that they are listening to you. So if you do that, then somebody will come back to you.
Mhm.
Smile. This is what we talked a little bit before. Be personable. Listen again, and if something makes you feel warm, then give somebody a smile. Hold your head high, your back straight. Your posture is really important. So if I'm leaned over and I'm just kind of like this, I'm not really giving you very much of my attention, and that other person is just not going to want to talk to me. And make eye contact.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Often harder than one thinks.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. But it's all these things that we're talking about are practice.
Mhm.
You have to be aware when you're learning a new skill, any new skill, how is my body? How, I can lean in with my back straight. I can smile, like all these things, we have to be conscious, right? And so that's what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness is being aware in the present moment without judgment.
Mhm.
And so you may want to, I know we do this for speaking, videotape yourself,
Mhm.
imagine yourself, see how you are, and kind of get a feeling of how you might be coming across to somebody. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I don't know. Okay, so make eye contact, and with your words,
Mhm.
stay on the same wavelength. With means listening carefully. If I admit, and I have a mantra, a commitment to myself, that when I'm talking with somebody, I don't ever move on without making sure that I have heard what they said.
Ah, yes.
Right? Because many times, if you're not aware of this, you're already thinking of the next thing that you want to say.
Very common. Yes.
Most common, most natural.
Mhm.
Right? But if I do that, then I've already missed what they're saying. And they
Mhm.
may have gone off into some other completely different, wavelength. And I'm over here kind of answering something that it's a disconnect.
Mhm.
How well can you stay on the same wavelength? And if you miss something, feel free to say, I just got distracted from it. I didn't catch what you said. Could you repeat what you said? Let me make sure that I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
And so these are counseling skills. And as a counselor or a coach or any one of these things, you learn these skills of active listening. Very, very, very important. When you're listening to somebody, listen also to their words. So those of us that are familiar with NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, people are either very visual, they're auditory, or they're kinesthetic, or a combination of these three.
Mhm.
There's 5 senses, but these are the ones that we want to listen for the most.
Mhm.
If don't move on until you're sure that you understand each other. Again, this is just what we just talked about. Be careful in thinking what you want to say. So let me come back. So if I'm listening to you, Elizabeth, and you say to me, I hear what you're saying, Tina.
Mhm.
This is going to give me an indication that the auditory, skill is something that is highly developed within you.
Mhm.
So I'm going to come back and say, I hear you too. Or I'm going to use words, or the sound of something makes me feel like blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to use the words that you use. If you're visual, you're going to say, I see what you mean. And so I may use visual pictures. Can you imagine?
Mhm.
Just imagine yourself, somebody who is auditory, generally the visual is not as strong. So I wouldn't go there. And kinesthetic is I feel. I sense, I feel, and so I might use feeling words. And it's the same thing as mirroring somebody's posture sometimes brings you into what we call rapport. And these are just, again, little tricks and tips of things that might help you become a better listener.
Well, and because the thing that I keep going back to is rule number one when you're presenting yourself is to make it about them. And so if they are visual people, then you're going to respond with visual language, even though you might be an auditory or a kinesthetic person.
Exactly.
You want to be on their wavelength.
Exactly. Exactly. And then these are what we call these clarifying questions. Do I understand you correctly? And repeat what you thought that you heard them say. Again, another danger is making assumptions. I happen to be pretty intuitive, and yet what I learned is my intuition is a great hunch. I could no sooner go on and say to you, Elizabeth, I know exactly what you're thinking, because I don't. I might have an idea of what you're thinking, and I might ask you, is this what's going on? Is this kind of what you're thinking? And you're going to say either yes or no. And that helps me know whether I'm on the mark. One of the things about the people that we're drawn to, they're very authentic and very real. And they're also usually pretty perceptive on our wavelengths. Now, again, there may be two people that I could never enter the conversation, or it's just not my thing. And yet they'll come together like wonderfully. But I want to make sure that I'm with you. I'm just always with you. And so I'm going to ask these questions, and I can't repeat it enough times to make sure that you're together with the person that you're talking with. Here's another wonderful, it's a question. I'm wondering if this might be going on. I'm wondering if this might be what you're thinking.
Right. Which works very well in a negotiation when you're trying to understand what they want.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so what I was going to say before, and I kind of lost my train of thought, when somebody gets us, it's just like heaven. Truly. When you feel like when you're talking with somebody, and if you're talking about something that you're trying to figure it out or you don't really know, and somebody kind of like just nails it for you. And that's what you want to do in a negotiation. You want to be able to nail what you think that they're thinking, or what you think is important to them, so that you're drawing out all those things. Again, remember, they're over here and they have a problem that needs to be solved. And what's the gap between where they are and where you can take them? All these things kind of come in here. Would this work for you? Or would this be helpful? Or again, you want to be the one that's also asking most of the questions. That's how somebody controls a negotiation, is being the one who's asking most of the questions.
Right, exactly.
And again, notice when you get distracted, and if you've missed something that they've said, come back and ask them again. Don't be afraid to ask them to repeat. And
they may not know exactly what they mean or what they need until they've talked about it.
That's right. That's right. And one of the other wonderful things that you can do is I like to synthesize what I think I hear somebody saying. So it may be over here, and people say, well, I'm all over the place. Well, no, not really, because I'm really following your train. You're going over here, and you're going over here, and you're going over here, but I'm finding a thread. And that's, again, from the active listening. It comes to you. You see it here, you see it here, you see it, and then you can pull it together and say, is this what's really important to you?
And then can you solve their problem?
Yes.
Because if it is, yeah, right.
That's right. And if you can't solve their problem, be very, very clear that you may not be the right person. And that goes back to that desperate, you're willing to walk away, not the right client, not the right job, not the right situation.
I find that actually with speaking gigs, when somebody says, here we have this speaking gig and we want to, or I say, I'd love to speak on your podcast. And then it turns out that I don't fit what they're looking for. or they want me to speak and I look at it and I said, I don't think I'm the right fit. One of the great ways to get a benefit from that is to recommend somebody, because then you've still given service. You've
Correct.
still helped them. Or if you're asking for, and I'd like to be on your podcast, and they say, oh my goodness, we've just had 3 speaker trainers in a row. I can't bring you out. Then you say, well, here are some people you could talk about. When should I get back to you? And when are you ready to hear my take on it? And then go back from there.
So you've talked a lot, Elizabeth, about follow-up.
Yes, follow-up is huge.
Follow-up is huge. And let's just say that, you have this one conversation and somebody says they want to think about it. And just like you modeled, when can we talk? Can we put something on our calendar? And can I get back to you on such and such a day? And closing it up, making it tight, and really not giving people the opportunity to be just who they are, because people get busy and then they, all of that stuff.
Well, and one of the statistics about sales, and any negotiation is a sales negotiation, is if you're the person who wants to get something from this, is that only about 8% of people actually follow up after the first conversation. So it's one of the things I'm constantly reminding myself to do. I'm not always perfect, but if I'm talking to somebody and whether they're going to hire me or not, then I say, I'll send you a proposal. Let's book a call for tomorrow so that you can ask me any further questions that come up.
There you go. So you're taking care of the detail for them.
Yes.
And that's also part of being just a good business person, or just that you want to make things easy for people. Have it ready. You have contracts ready. You have this ready. You have proposals, all the kinds of things to make it easy. So let's just kind of jump. This is be aware of your tone. That's incredibly important, because you could, and your eye, if your eyes are rolling in your head or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of jump through this right now. We're going to get to the emotional control.
Right.
Here we go. All right. Emotional control. Again, here's this, another exercise. So for your listeners, they could do it right now if they're on. And if not, you can do this in your own time. Bring up your most uncomfortable feeling that you had during those 3 scenarios. So I'll go back to those scenarios of you were selling or offering your services to somebody who had no money, or a company who had no money. The other one was they had a lot of money. And the third one was you didn't know how much money they had. Just take a moment. Just notice. And then can you find the sensation or the discomfort in your body? We've talked a lot about this body-mind connection, and the discomfort in your body gives you a clue that you're uncomfortable. Something is off. Something doesn't feel right. And then can you describe the feeling and put it in words and the location of the sensation?
For me, it's always in my stomach. When my stomach starts to churn, then I said, oh, something's going on. I better pay attention.
There you go.
Yes. Or it might mean I'm hungry, but
And you may not even know what it's saying or why that's happening, but that something is putting your system on alert. Right. So when I say, I had a client not too long ago who canceled at the last minute, and I only meet with her once a month. And I waited till the whole month to bring up the policy of, and she said, oh yeah, I wasn't sure. And anytime that I thought about sending her a text or sending her a bill I just got that feeling inside, like, no, we need to talk about this. And it stopped me from doing something that I didn't feel good about.
Mhm.
The feeling is what I'm most connected to. And the feeling then brings up a lot of old experiences
Yes.
where I've gotten myself into trouble.
So when you get to the end of this list, I've got one more question to ask you as we wrap this up. Does the feeling feel familiar? Ah, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then that gives me information. I know this feeling. I'm going to pay attention. When else have I experienced it? Okay. And so there's so much more here, Elizabeth. This is kind of a good part of the whole course. So these are tidbits of things that you can learn about yourself and learn about our negotiation.
Well,
you want me to
let's read this, the next one for those who are listening, the know thyself, because that's very important.
Yeah. Where and when did you, in the process, did you get anxious and give in or give up?
Right. Okay. And what else do we know about that?
And what did you notice about your body? Can you recognize how your body gives you information? And then this goes into the whole, do you know how to regulate your nervous system so that your body is calm and your mind is clear? And that really is the essence of mastery under pressure. One of the things that I think about a lot is we all love rules, and not rules, but recipes.
Yes.
You know, how do I get from here to here? You know, and I'm in this negotiation, and then what do I do this, and then I do that, and then I do that. Well, we can only prepare, but we don't really know what's going to happen.
Right.
And so the skills that I teach here are the ones that prepare you to be able to be agile and to be able to think clearly on your feet, to recognize. My son and I were talking the other day, and he said, "Mom, what you teach reminds me of what they teach in the Army, is how to improvise, you know, how to adapt, and then how to overcome whatever it is that you need to overcome to get to your goal."
Well, Tina Greenbaum, this has been awesome. If you would skip to your last slide, I've got one more question to ask you as we finish. But first of all, how do we find out more?
So you can get in touch with me, and if you're interested really in learning more, you can make an appointment with me. I'm generous with my 30-minute consultation. So this is masterycalendar.com, where you can make you can get an appointment on my calendar. And
we will put all this in the comments, right?
Yes, 631-988-1109. You can text me. And masteryunderpressure.net is a quiz that you can take on your own and find out where you are in this level of peak performance and keeping your body calm and your mind clear. And you'll get a really good sense of the skills that go into helping you do that.
Great. I am going to stop your sharing because I've got one last question for you, which is, we've all had negotiations where we blew it, where we screwed up. How does one, and then of course, like I, for instance, can remember in my 20s when I insulted that guy, things like that, and I may still be beating myself up for a bad negotiation when I was 25, things like that. How do we move forward if indeed you think you did a terrible job?
Well, as we say, failure, the only thing that is failure is if you don't learn from it. And there is no such thing as perfection. And we are all human. And I love the term beginner's mind,
Mhm.
because a beginner's mind allows for mistakes and
Mhm.
allows for what I don't really call it failure. Again, if I've learned something, and I think the last talk that we did, I might have shared the story of how I had a figure in mind, and then when it came out, it just was, that much lower. And I said, well, I would have paid you that much more. And so that was a classic one. And I studied, how did I get there?
Mhm.
What was
How
it
did you sabotage yourself?
right? So and the other thing about the term mindfulness that I love very much, it's being aware in the present moment without judgment.
Mhm.
So I can go back and look at these situations and not judge myself. I can learn from them.
Mhm.
And there's also another wonderful saying that helps me. We make decisions based on the best information we have available at the present time.
Ah, thank you. Say that one again, please.
We make decisions
Uh-huh.
based on the best information that we have available at the present time.
That sounds like a tweetable tweet, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. So if I only learned up to here, I couldn't know anymore, or I didn't see that was happening, or I didn't pick it up, or it hit my blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
At 23 years old, I married the person that was not the right person. Based on the best information I had at the present time, that's how I made that decision.
Great.
That really helps with regrets.
Yes. Yeah. And to let it go and move on, because you can't change it.
Cannot change. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these things easier said than done, but
yeah. Tina Greenbaum, thank you so very, very much for having been on the Speakers Who Get Results podcast and Strategic Speaking for Results broadcast. This is
we also have our Confident Negotiator course, which people
yes. So we will be posting a link to the course in how to be a confident negotiator, which you can get from Tina. And you have a discount, you said?
I have a 25% discount.
Wow.
For anybody that signs up from your podcast.
Okay.
And the code word is confident, and it'll be in your notes. And it is a lot of what we talked about today, plus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's $197 is the retail price. So it's very affordable. And my goal is to be able to give these skills to as many people that want to take advantage of them.
Well, thank you so very much, Tina. It's been a delight to have you here on the broadcast. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. And this is Elizabeth Bachman. I will see you on the next one.